This was a large brass coin. It was equal to a quarter of a silver denarius, and in ancient Pompeii, prices were calculated with this coin. With 1 sestertius, you could buy 2 loaves of bread, 2 liters of cheap wine, or half a liter of good wine. If you were a Pompeii worker, your daily wage would range between 1 and 4 sestertius, and often you would earn a total of 500 to 1,000 sestertius over the year. However, as we'll see shortly, some Romans earned a great deal more. At the bottom of the income hierarchy were unskilled rural day laborers. These men were generally hired to help at harvest time. In cities, and especially in Rome itself, they were most commonly employed on large building projects. Nowhere did they receive good wages. Wages in the Roman world appear to have been fairly close to subsistence. As mentioned earlier, in Pompeii, men earned only a few sestertius for a day's hard labor. Craftsmen earned noticeably more than laborers. Our best sense of how much more comes from Diocletian's maximum prices edict. According to the edict, a baker earned about twice as much as an agricultural laborer, a wall painter 3 times as much, and the portrait artist 6 times as much. From the late 1st century to the late 2nd century, the official annual pay for Roman legionaries was 1,200 sestertius. In practice, they received less because part of their pay was deducted for food and equipment. When considered together with the substantial discharge bonus, an ordinary legionary could attain the income level of a skilled craftsman. Officers were paid much better. An ordinary centurion earned 18,000 sestertius a year. The chief centurion of a legion earned 72,000 sestertius, and the commanding general earned 200,000 sestertius. That was equal to the pay of 167 legionaries. That really was a high income. The earnings of ancient lawyers varied, as with their modern counterparts, between poverty and extreme wealth. Until the imperial period, Roman advocates were forbidden from charging fees for their services, and even after the ban was lifted, their fees were capped at 10,000 sestertius, about 8 times a legionary's annual pay. However, it became customary to give advocates expensive gifts. For example, Cicero once received a supposed loan of 2 million sestertius from a client, which he never intended to have repaid. Many Roman doctors were low-status freedmen, but some became extremely rich. The personal physician to the emperors Caligula and Claudius reportedly received 500,000 sestertius a year, the equivalent of the pay of 416 legionaries. One famous Roman doctor had demanded 200,000 sestertius from a single patient for treatment. Most teachers, then as now, earned miserably low wages. But as with law and medicine, a small number of teachers who catered to the wealthy and famous amassed huge sums. A Roman professor of rhetoric is reported to have earned 400,000 sestertius a year, equal to 333 legionaries' pay. In Rome, Athens, and other large cities, some of the most distinguished teachers occupied chairs in rhetoric and philosophy, essentially a form of permanent professorship in the ancient world, and could receive up to an additional 100,000 sestertius in salary. Some entertainers could also be as rich as any famous doctor or professor. A celebrated mime performer could earn 200,000 sestertius a year, and the great comic actor Roscius earned even more. Playwrights rarely became rich from their texts, but the Emperor Augustus once rewarded a writer of a well-received tragedy with 1 million sestertius. Another emperor gave 2 Cythera players 200,000 sestertius each. Gladiators were usually slaves, but they were paid for each fight. These payments could be quite high for top fighters, since gladiators normally received about a quarter of what the trainers of the games were paid by the sponsors. Famous retired gladiators could receive 100,000 sestertius or more for a single exhibition, the equivalent of 85 legionaries' pay for one show. But the richest in the Roman entertainment world were the charioteers of the Circus Maximus. Over a long and extremely intense career, one driver won 1,462 races and accumulated roughly 36 million sestertius. That prize money was enough to match the annual pay of nearly 30,000 legionaries and made him the ancient equivalent of a modern billionaire. The wealthiest Romans were those who owned businesses. They derived incomes from their estates, various investments, enterprises run on slave labor, and income-producing loans. In the imperial period, senators were required to have at least 1 million sesterces, equal to the annual pay of 833 legionaries, and most were far richer than that. Cicero's property at about 13 million sesterces marked him as a senator of middling wealth. The extraordinary rich Crassus possessed more than 200 million sesterces. In the next century, 2 Romans are reported to have had fortunes of 400 million sesterces. That would have been enough to cover the annual pay of 330,000 legionaries. Of course, the best paid job was in the imperial service, but job security was not particularly good. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you'd like to learn more about ancient prices and wages, let me know in the comments. Bye!